Yeah. I've been down so long it look like up to me. They look up to me. I got fake people showing fake love to me. Straight up to my face. Straight up to my face.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the A&J Soccer Show. As always, my name is Andrew Pipers, and I'm here with
Jalen Thompson.
And before we get started, I have to admit I've got a little cold right now, so if I sound a little funny, I apologize. But despite that, we have an awesome show for you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Premier League. There was some midweek games and some weekend games that we want to get into, but this is a big episode about the World Cup. We want to bring a really comprehensive World Cup episode to you all, and we hope you enjoy it. But first, to talk about the Premier League, last week, Man City, Southampton, they left it late, 2-1. Sterling scores on the last kick of the game. What did you think?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard these days to watch the City games. Just kidding. No, it's always easy. But for the teams that are playing us now, they kind of respect us a lot more than I feel like they used to. So immediately they're sitting back and they're absorbing pressure, and then they're looking to counter. So, in the recent games, we've been able to cope with it, and we kept our patience, and we, in the end, almost too late, we get back. But I think Sterling is once again proving that he is a changed person. He's a changed player under Pep, and he continues to come clutch in the big moments.
Yeah, it was an absolutely beautiful goal to watch. I remember I was watching the game. My friend, who's a Liverpool fan, walks in. He starts laughing at me, saying, "You guys dropped points." And then right as he said that, I celebrate because Sterling curls it in with the last kick of the game. I hope he's listening so he can hear that. But anyway, I agree. Teams are starting to say the only way we can get a possible result against the City side is to just park the bus with I think even Nathan Redmond from Southampton was he was basically in his own half the entire game. And I was a little nervous about how things are going because it's a little reminiscent of maybe last year with City kind of dropping points now and then, but this is the mentality that champions have. You find a way every time. So, yeah. Yeah,
and I think if you notice that also in the midweek, Arsenal beat Huddersfield 5-0.
Yeah.
Kind of shows you the difference where I can't say that I watched the game, but I feel like Huddersfield would have kind of approached the game a bit differently against Arsenal. They felt like they probably had a better chance to attack, so they probably didn't sit back as much against them. And you can see when the game's a bit more open, Arsenal was able to kind of take advantage of their opportunities and put them in. And I think that's another big thing about City. If we don't score in the first half, it makes it really difficult, especially early. If we don't score early, it lets the team that's sitting in against us get even more confidence, and I think it's harder for us to break them down as time wears on.
Sure. And our kryptonite this year so far has been set pieces and corners. Corner kicks. The Huddersfield goal from a couple weeks ago was off of a corner. Southampton's goal was off of, I don't know if it was off of a set piece, but it might have been. And then, we concede a lot off of set pieces. But that Arsenal game, that you're right. I think with the more open play, Arsenal was able to destroy them. But another big game from the midweek that I want to talk about is Everton-West Ham, and particularly with you as a player. If you haven't seen this Wayne Rooney goal, he scores from halfway, and I just got to ask you, how hard is that to do, and the way he did it?
Nah, man, it's crazy. It's crazy that, he's done it before in past years. He's been able to score from distance, but for him to be able to drive the ball from behind in his own half, he's behind midfield, and he just drives it perfectly. It's just like there's no type of way to explain how difficult that is. The goalkeeper's running back. He's got to have the right pace on it. He has the right accuracy to hit it in the goal. It's just a lot of things that he has to consider. I think just as a player, when you're in that situation, your instincts just take over. And I think as soon as he looked up and saw the goalkeeper's out, I don't think he even thought about the technique. He just literally hit the ball as his brain told him to, and I think that's exactly ends up in a goal.
It was beautiful to watch, and I think Big Sam Allardyce was there. He wasn't Everton manager yet, but he saw, the first game he watched of his new club was Wayne Rooney scoring a halfway line goal, so that's pretty impressive. But yeah, I can only imagine how difficult that is to do. But just moving on to those were the midweek games, and then the weekend there were games as well. So the big one was Manchester United versus Arsenal. And
what a game!
Yeah, it was an amazing game of soccer, very end-to-end. I would say that type of game for people who don't watch soccer is what they should watch. That type of game.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to introduce them to the sport. No, definitely. I think the commentators were saying throughout the game that it's probably one of the most exciting games you'll be able to watch all year, just because of how end-to-end it was. I mean, there was a point in time where Arsenal was just pinning Man U in their own box, and they were just pinging it around them. But I think the real big game changer for me was David De Gea in this game. I mean, the guy had countless number of saves, and just really kept. It would have been a completely different game if he wasn't in the net.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's tough to. It's interesting to look at De Gea's progression over the years. When Sir Alex first brought him in, he was sort of a skinny, lanky keeper. He seemed like he would get overpowered a lot, at least from my experience watching him. But now he's, he's in discussion of being one of the world's best, especially with Neuer injured right now. He's in that conversation for sure. But another so Manchester United wins 3-1. They keep the pressure on City with the title race. I think it's at 8 points right now. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And another big instance from that game is Paul Pogba picking up the red card, which means he misses this weekend's Manchester derby. How big of a loss is he for United?
Yo, that is huge for, I think, the way that Mourinho will obviously approach the game, having one of his star players out. I think if they had Pogba, I think they would have been a bit more risky, a bit more attacking in their play. But I think for sure now that they don't have him, I think they're going to kind of approach the game like some of the lower table teams do it. They're going to sit back against us. But the difference is that they have a lot of quality in their counterattack. So I think if City, I think they're going to be ready for it, but I think with the pace that Rashford and Lukaku, Martial has, I think it could be a problem on the break. But overall, I don't know. I think that the suspension was rightly given. I think it was a pretty serious tackle on Bellerin. Could have hurt him pretty badly, but I think it's a 3-game suspension overall. So, I mean, that's just big for the Man U's title hopes and just keeping up with City in general.
Yeah, and it'll be a good derby to watch. I predict, similar to you, they'll kind of pack it in with Herrera and Matic kind of clipping at the heels of De Bruyne and Silva. And maybe, Pep, he's been, I would say, he's experimented a lot with formations this year, but a lot of the time he goes with the 4-3-3 with, Silva, De Bruyne, and Fernandinho in the midfield. But I think he might do what he had to do against West Ham, which was put a fourth attacking player on. I can't remember who it was, but essentially there were De Bruyne, Silva, and then 4 attacking players with no holding midfielder. So I can definitely see that happening, which would be more dangerous against Manchester United, like you said, with the counterattack. But it'll be a game to watch this weekend. I think.
Honestly, I'm really hoping that Pep has been doing some practice during on the training ground with Aguero and Jesus up top, because I think that'd be awesome for him to he's been training that in his back pocket, and all of a sudden a game like this where, I mean, it's a pretty big decider on how the title race could end up, because we beat them, we go 11 points ahead, and that's a huge gap for teams to try to catch up, so I think that if he can come out and put Aguero and Jesus up top, and they can have a good connection, I think that would be a really, really dangerous front two.
Yeah, I agree. But so that was the Premier League recap that we wanted to give you guys. Tried to keep it short, but we also, the major purpose of this episode, we want to talk about the World Cup draw that just came out. I'm excited. It's six and a half months away, basically, and there's some really interesting groups that we want to get into. So I'll just start out with Group A, which is Russia, Uruguay, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. And looking at that, Uruguay is the strongest team in that group. I think you have Cavani and Suarez, who are just class, and Uruguay is a tournament team. I don't know how else to describe it. They always do well in tournaments. If you look at Copa America, whether it be Copa America, the World Cup, they're always doing well. But I think number 2 in that group is going to be Egypt, with Mo Salah of Liverpool. Sort of his pace is unquestionable, and his quality, his form right now is really good. And just a fun fact about Egypt, their goalkeeper is going to be the oldest player to ever play, and he's 45 years old, which is pretty impressive.
I had no idea.
those are my thoughts on Group A. What do you have?
I think I'm going to have to agree with you. I don't know too much about Russia's squad, but with the way that Mohamed Salah is playing, like you were talking about, it's kind of hard not to count Egypt in to be able to have a chance to go past the group stage, which is interesting because I think before Salah, if someone saw Egypt in a group, they would be like, yeah, there's no way they're getting out. They probably have the similar chances of Saudi Arabia. But I think it's the World Cup. Anything can happen. I think you got to keep your eyes on everybody. But I think overall it's a pretty competitive group. I think the Russia, Uruguay, and Egypt have the best chance of making it out. But, I mean, you never know. Saudi Arabia could surprise you. Yep. But moving on to Group B, there's Portugal, Spain, Iran, and Morocco. And I mean, that's a pretty dominant group. There's two teams that we all know that are most likely going to move on, which is Portugal and Spain. But wow, that's going to be a really good game to be able to watch.
It's going to be great. And just to throw some optimism in there, if you're an Iran or Morocco fan, maybe you get a draw against Portugal or Spain, and maybe it's the World Cup, anything can happen. But I think the reigning European champions, Portugal, are going to come in strong. Especially, I think Ronaldo is going to be on his point, on doing his best or playing his best, and and Spain is the 2010 World Cup champions. They sort of had a little bit of a lull in the last World Cup, but they have a really strong squad with the likes of Isco. Isco is a really prominent midfielder. But getting into Group C, we have a draw that the French will like a lot. So it's France, Peru, Denmark, and Australia. I don't think any of those teams can challenge France to win the group. And between those last three teams, I honestly think it's a lot closer than a lot of people believe. Australia has a promising goalkeeper in Matt Ryan, who is, I believe that's his name, and he's the Brighton goalkeeper. And watching some of Brighton this year, he's come up big with some saves. Huddersfield has a guy named Aaron Moy, who's an Australian, who's really quite good as well. Denmark, you've got Christian Eriksen, and Peru squeaked in there in qualifying, so they might be the weakest. But if I had to give a prediction, I would say France, Denmark.
Yeah, I think Denmark is someone that people are definitely going to sleep on. I think Eriksen is in really good form. I think that he is one of the best attacking midfielders in the game right now. So I think him and the other attacking options he has at his disposal can make it really difficult. For France, I think they're still going to advance as the first place team, but I think they'll give them a run for their money. And like you said, I think it also is pretty competitive between Peru, Denmark, and Australia, but at the end of the day, France is going to be the victor of that group. Group D, so we have Argentina, Croatia, Iceland, and Nigeria. And let me just say, I feel like this group is a lot more competitive than what people are going to think. I think Argentina hasn't been able to prove themselves on the international stage lately. I just think that when they get to the World Cup, some of the players that are big names in club, like even Aguero and Higuain, they haven't been able to step up and fill that role in their international space. But I think with Dybala coming in as another young player, I think Argentina, this is really their year to figure things out and make a big run for the World Cup final. So, I mean, I definitely think that Argentina is going to move with the first place spot. But if I had to predict, I would say, honestly, Nigeria. I'm going to put my money on Nigeria. I think they're going to give the other teams a pretty good run for their money, because I think on face value, I feel like for Croatia is the logical second choice. What do you think?
Yeah, I would have to say Croatia in the second spot. I think they've got one of the best midfields in the world with the likes of Modric, Rakitic, Kovacic. I think their quality in the midfield will help them do a second place finish in that group. But you can never count out Iceland, after we learned at the Euros with the mighty Viking clap. Nigeria is interesting. I haven't gotten a chance to watch them a lot this year. I don't know if the ex-City player Kelechi Iheanacho is playing for them, but he was always a threat. But if I had to say something, I would say Argentina, Croatia for Group D, probably. And then when we get into Group E, we've got Brazil, Switzerland, Costa Rica, and Serbia. And that one, Costa Rica, I don't think they're the same team they were in 2014 when they won their group, which was one of the groups of death. Serbia is a good-looking team, actually. I was able to watch them in qualifying a little bit, and they're a good-looking team, but I have to say, I think it's going to be Brazil 1. Brazil are some of the tournament favorites. I think they're the tournament favorite. They've got just a golden generation. I can't say that for Brazil, because Brazil is, amazing historically, but they have really good players right now.
Yeah, on the come up, yeah, for sure.
And Switzerland, when I think Switzerland, I think Shaqiri, and he always has big tournaments. So I think Brazil, Switzerland 1-2, but I wouldn't be surprised if Serbia squeaks past Switzerland.
It's funny because I feel like Costa Rica, it's that CONCACAF spirit. I don't know. I wouldn't rule them out to give the other two teams run for their money. So I'm actually going to think that Brazil is going to sweep the group. But I think Costa Rica is going to be the team that follows them up with some really close games with Switzerland and Serbia. But I think at the end of the day, I'm going to be backing them to try to get that second spot in the group. But with Brazil, I mean, their squad is just ridiculous. Their attack I think they kind of play a 4-3-3. They probably have Jesus, Neymar, and they could put Willian or Douglas Costa, or there's so many wingers that they have that are just so young and so talented that honestly every spot on the field is matched with a world-class player. I think their goalkeeper in recent years has been something that has been a bit shaky, but with Ederson playing the way that he is recently, I think that's a spot that is completely filled with someone that's fully capable of doing the job. So
yeah, absolutely.
I definitely think Brazil is going to be able to take the first spot in the group. Moving on to Group F, we have Germany, Mexico, Sweden, and South Korea. Germany, obviously, the favorites out of that group. But once again, I think it's a very competitive group in terms of the other three teams we have left in there. I think Mexico will have a lot of pressure on them as always, and I think I'm not sure what they've done with their manager, but I think they have the talent to be able to squeak out second. Sweden, I don't even know if Ibra is still playing internationally, but
I think the latest I've heard, no. I think he's not playing internationally. Okay. But knowing Ibra, I think, that could change. Do you think he might,
honestly, I couldn't tell you. I don't know at what stage I don't know if he's fully recovered yet. I know he got some playing time earlier this year in the Premier League, but honestly, that's going to be a huge decider on whether Sweden's going to be able to have a chance of advancing or not. And I don't know too much about South Korea, but I think overall I'm just going to put my money on Germany and Mexico to come out of this one.
Yeah, that's a good bet for sure. It's interesting to look at this. If Sweden was qualifying against Italy, as we discussed earlier, if that would have been Italy, that would have been a really interesting group. But it is Sweden. They did beat Italy. So Germany, I think number one, another tournament favorite. I think they're going to top the group. I think Sweden. I think Sweden just. For Sweden, it depends if the guy from Leipzig, whose name is escaping me right now,
Forsberg.
Yeah, if Forsberg is on, I think Sweden get through this group ahead of Mexico.
Really? Okay.
I think he's that good of a player. And there's just something about the Mexican side lately that I haven't been totally convinced with. So I'm gonna go ahead and say Germany, Sweden there, but it'll be close between Sweden and Mexico. And South Korea, I don't know much about. From commentary I've heard from other people, they say this Korean team doesn't look as strong as previous Korean teams, and I think previous Korean teams have also not done that well. So I don't think they'll do well either. So yeah, so Germany, Sweden are my picks for Group F, and then moving on to a pretty interesting group of Group G, which has Belgium, England, Tunisia, and Panama, and I think Roberto Martinez and Gareth Southgate, the managers of Belgium and England respectively, are very happy with this draw. I think Panama won't pose a threat at all. Another interesting point, USA would have been in that spot. I'm sorry to bring it up again, but what a group that would have been. USA, Belgium, England.
We probably would have labeled the group of death just being Americans, but that would have been definitely an interesting group.
Yeah, and then I think Belgium, England always plays so bad in tournaments. They on paper they don't look bad. Maybe with Sterling playing better, Stones playing better, Rashford's playing really well. Maybe they'll show up. But I just think the quality in the Belgium team with the likes of De Bruyne, Hazard, defensively also Kompany, I could go on. I think Belgium will win this group and England will get second. However, in terms of the bigger tournament, I think this is Belgium's last chance to maybe the next Euro cycle will be their last chance to win a major tournament before these players start leaving their primes.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Belgium top in the group just because their overall quality with their stellar back line with the likes of, Alderweireld and Vertonghen back there, Courtois on the goal. You talked about their midfield a little bit. Lukaku, you can't forget Lukaku up top. Carrasco on the wing. Hazard. It's just like they have a star-studded lineup. But also, we talk about England not kind of showing up for tournaments. I think Belgium has been another disappointment for a lot of people. They see the potential that Belgium has, but they don't live up to it. But I think since the last World Cup and since the Euros, some of the players have had some time to mature, and I think that this is a really big opportunity for Belgium to make their stamp on the tournament. I think they could go pretty far, and I think that they can surprise some people. But yeah, I'm going to go with Belgium and England to advance. I think Panama will make things interesting. I could see Panama pulling a draw against England, honestly.
I could see that.
And with Belgium, I think if they don't show up to play, I could definitely see Panama making it hard for those two to earn some points and just think that they can just slide through the group. But just Group H as the last one we have here, and it's weird. It's weird. This is one of the ones that doesn't have one of the quote unquote major teams. It's kind of similar to Group A, but it has Poland, Colombia, Senegal, and Japan. At first looks, I think it might be a toss-up. I think you have big players across the teams. Japan, you have Shinji Kagawa. Senegal, you have Sadio Mane. Right. Colombia, James Rodriguez. Poland, Lewandowski. So you have these big-name players that people can identify with the national teams. But at the end of the day, I honestly don't know too much about either one of them, except for I know Colombia has some history with the last World Cup. They did pretty well, and Japan also is a constant presence in the past couple World Cups. So if I gotta be honest with you, I say Poland sneaks out with the first place spot, and I say Senegal follows them up, and it surprises the group. I don't think Senegal is someone that people know too much about. I don't think people know too much about the younger players that they have, but I think from the presence that they have in the Premier League, I know they're pretty couple strong midfielders that are from Senegal. So I just see them making it pretty hard, and I see them coming out in the second place spot.
Yeah, I could definitely see what you're saying with Senegal. I think they had a pretty impressive Africa Cup of Nations as well. I think for me, I have to go with, I think Colombia is going to top the group. I think they're similar to Uruguay from Group A. I think they're also a very good tournament team, at least from my experience watching them. And I think James Rodriguez with Juan Cuadrado, Carlos Bacca, I think that's an attack that's going to really cause some damage to a lot of the defenses in that group. So for me, I got to go Colombia 1, and then I'm inclined to put Poland at 2, but I think all they really have is Lewandowski that I can think of, and he's good. He's really, really good, but I don't know if he can carry them. I don't know if he could carry them through this group, despite it being a relatively weak group. So for my sort of sleeper, I'm going to go with Japan right after Colombia. I think Japan has a lot of quality players, and they sort of aren't really discussed a lot, like you were talking about Shinji Kagawa, for example. So I think that'll be Colombia, Japan. Interesting group. Like you said, no major teams, but that'll be one where I think it's just a toss-up, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at all the groups, and there's some pretty major games that happen. Belgium, England will be a pretty good one to watch. Portugal, Spain, Argentina, Croatia. I think there's a lot of good matchups in the group stage, and I think the groups are relatively even in terms of, I feel like a lot of them there is a clear first place winner, but I think the competition for the second place spot will be really competitive among the other groups. So is there anyone that you really think that is going to come out on top? We're pretty early. We're pretty far away from the World Cup. Injuries can happen. But is there anyone that you see like just kind of coming in front of the rest.
Yeah. So, initially I don't see any groups of death here that might screw things up that way. But I think I have to say Germany, and if you're a fan of the show, I talk about German soccer a little bit, and despite that, I think they're gonna do very well, perhaps even win again, because they won the Confederations Cup with such a young team, and that was like their B or C team. And I think they've got a lot of young talent combined with the experience of, say, a Mats Hummels or a Manuel Neuer carry, who they've been there. They've won the World Cup before. And you have Lars Stindl, you have Timo Werner to take the place of Klose, Miroslav Klose. You have you still have older players like Özil in there, but you have Sané, who's now really, really a threat on the wing.
Oh yeah.
And I just think Germany's got an edge because of the combination of youth and experience in the team. But what about you?
Dude, I'm going to be honest with you. I think France just has too nice of a lineup not to win this thing. With, Mbappe coming out and becoming a breakout star. I mean, you have Griezmann. It's just there's too many. Pogba, Conte.
They're scary.
I think I mentioned it before in one of the previous shows. They're just an all-around dominant squad, and I just can't see how they don't end up making it out. I think
at least to the final, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to. I mean, I think there's room for them to disappoint. I think they could end up flopping, but they're kind of like a Brazil with me. I feel like Brazil would end up being my second team that I would pick to advance. But personally, in terms of like who I'm going to actually support for the tournament, I think Belgium is someone that I want to see go really far. I think it'd be cool to see them win. But also Argentina, just because I think the Messi-Ronaldo debate would be really tense. Like there'd be a lot of tension added to the debate if Messi gets a World Cup under his belt. So I think it'd be cool to see him do that. And I honestly couldn't tell you what I think Portugal's going to end up doing. I think they have a pretty talented squad, but I think and like I said, I think they're going to advance from the group. But I'm not sure who they're going to get matched up with and how they are going to be able to handle them.
Right. Yeah, and just with that Messi debate, could you imagine if it worked out where it was Argentina, Portugal in the final? that would be one for the record books. Yeah. But in terms of teams, I'm going to support Germany because I've always supported them. But I also, part of what we want to do. A lot of you guys watch the World Cup because the U.S. is in it, and hopefully by listening and just watching some soccer, you might want to get excited about watching the World Cup despite the U.S. not being in it. And I think if I was new to the game, I would want an underdog to support, and I would go with Iceland again because they've done it. They beat England in the last Euros. I think there's a great story there of a country of 330,000 people, I believe. So Iceland's a good underdog to go for, but if you want to go for a team that you think is going to win, I don't think you can go wrong with France, Brazil, or Germany. Those are the top three in my opinion. But yeah, so I think that's all I've got on the World Cup. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
No, kind of going off of what you were talking about with the U.S. Some big news. We mentioned in the past about the U.S. presidential for the soccer presidential election. Sunil, the current president, has just dropped out of the race. So that's pretty big. I don't really have much other to say about that, but I think it's important that we keep you guys up to date with the election. I think that's a huge change in the candidates that are running. Yeah, I agree. But so other than that, I mean, we really hope you enjoyed the episode. That's all we've got for you today. As I said last episode, we are on iTunes, so please check us out on iTunes, on YouTube, and we're also on a Davidson podcast website that I'll put a link to in the YouTube video. But yeah, please check us out. Yeah. So always, you guys, if you could just subscribe, and comment below anything that you guys would like to talk about next week. But other than that, we'll see you guys next time.
That's when they smile in my face. Whole time they wanna take my place. Whole time they wanna take my place. Whole time they wanna take my place. Yeah, I know they wanna take my place.